Remember that they are changing the sound of my voice. This is part two. Now, at this point, you should understand why everyone else is doing the wrong thing, and everyone you're ever going to come across is doing the wrong thing except for me. You should already understand that at this point. But I'm going to overkill this, right? Has to do with their cultural complicity. It has to do with what they're part and parcel with, right? They're complicit with. They're contributing to, what they're enabling, and them existing without the highest cause, which is universal, pinpointed moral precision in reality. Not anything you've been taught, because they water it down, they confuse it, they pollute it, they make it toxic. But it's true form. The Royal African Falcon taught martial arts order. You can't be righteous if you cheat me out of my right to lead, whether you know what you're doing or not. Think about the idea of manslaughter. If you kill somebody unfairly, it's a crime, according to the law of the land, for example. Even if you don't appreciate what you're doing is likely to cause someone to die, right? It's kind of a reckless murder. It doesn't make you as guilty as if you did on purpose, but you're still guilty. The world is guilty of cheating me out of my right to lead. Some of them know damn well what they're doing, and some of them don't even know who I am, but they're all guilty of it. And it passes down from generation to generation as their genes are forged for the devil. See in John 8:44, right? The children of the devil, their inclinations, their grouping, their formation. Their genes are formed by the foolish builders to cheat me out of my right to lead. And those who come across me decided to cheat me out of my right to lead. And those who don't know who I am, well, they were cultivated, they were grown as weeds, right? The parable of the weeds, for example, to cheat me. And so they would have cheated me anyway, and it was their destiny to cheat me. And so they're headed to the fire like a weed has its destiny, like a poisonous snake has its destiny. Okay. That's overkill, the show. Galatians 6:7. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked, right? He cannot truly be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Again, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. And the word reaps is the word rapes scrambled. Now, it is stupid to consider the problem of rape without considering the most common form of it, right? I mean, why bother to consider if you're not going to consider the most common form of it? The most common form of rape is rape by deception, okay? Raising people a certain way to think a certain way, which causes them to have sex with people in a certain way with certain people, okay? And not to have sex with other people or one other person, or not have sex at all, because you raised them to be conned. So when you raise them to be conned and easily conned in an organized manner or otherwise, then their consent is just the con that was sent, and it's not truly consenting. Think about it. Pause it if you have to. Write it down. Run it back. Think about it. Let's go to Hosea 10, verse 12. Hosea is talking to the Israelites. The whole Bible, in a sense, is written to the Jews first and foremost. Okay? So he's talking to them. He's saying, don't fall into this path. Don't fall into the false path. Obey the Royal African Falcon martial art order. And it's implicit by what is being said. Righteousness is being said. Not flesh-based thinking. Righteousness. This is why God handed them over to the Assyrians, the Babylonians, Persians, Egyptians, okay, Romans, you name it. Because he said, look, you're not supposed to be in charge. God's in charge. And whether he sends a Babylonian or a Cushite or whoever, you're supposed to obey God. You're supposed to look at what is righteous. You know them by their fruit, not their flesh. Hosea 10:12. Sow righteousness for yourself, reap the fruit of unfailing love, and break up your unplowed ground, for it is time to seek the Lord until he comes and showers his righteousness on you. But you have planted wickedness. You have reaped evil, and you have eaten the fruit of deception, because you have depended on your own strength and on your many warriors. You depended on the flesh, right? The flesh, right? Just bodybuilding, MMA fighting. You didn't depend on the Spirit of God and the accompanying principles. You depended on your own strength. And how do we know you're not in the Spirit of God? Because you're unprincipled. Because you're cheating me out of my right to lead. Because of how you treat people. Because of the rules you follow and the rules you don't follow. The roar of battle will rise against your people, so that all your fortresses will be devastated, as Shalman devastated Beth Arbel on the day of battle. when mothers were dashed to the ground with their children, so will it happen to you, Bethel, because your wickedness is great. When that day dawns, the king of Israel will be completely destroyed. When that day dawns, right, this is the end. The idea of an Israelite king is done, because they stalk spiritually first. Is righteousness the name of a person or a place? No, it's a spirit. It's the principles. Is the king a specific king? Is it Saul they're talking about? Is it Asa? Is it Hezekiah? No, it's talking about the idea of a king that's from the Jewish people, right? The kingdom, especially the king, will be taken away from you. And you see there, one of the last things that Christ said as a character in the story in Luke 23, he quoted Hosea 10. We said, then they will say to the hills and the mountains, fall on us and cover us. That's from this same chapter. Okay, get to Matthew 7:13. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the path. Broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. This connects to Proverbs 13:15. Good judgment wins favor, but the way of the unfaithful leads to their destruction. Did you catch that? The word destruction. Going back to Matthew 7 again. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. So if wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, but the way of the unfaithful leads to destruction, right? And it's put in there as an antithesis. It's put in opposition to good judgment. Proverbs 13:15, good judgment wins favor, but the way of the unfaithful leads to destruction. So if they want to avoid destruction, they need good judgment. Good judgment leads to heaven. It wins favor from God and leads to heaven. But the way of the unfaithful leads to their destruction. It says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. So what is the problem here? Many will call my name and I won't answer them. Why? Because you had bad judgment. Who did you date and why? What were you doing for a living? Why didn't you have the highest cause? Why did you break the greatest commandment, which is love God with all your being, all your heart, all your soul, all your mind? Why did you break the greatest commandment? Why weren't you willing to die for God? Because you have bad judgment. Okay. Let's go down to the next section of this same chapter, Matthew 7. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Remember, the wolf is a symbol of the Roman people. Western system is a neo-Roman system, and it's spread across the world. Now the whole world has a neo-Roman system. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus by their fruit you will recognize them. Now, why wouldn't somebody bear good fruit? It was part of the tree, their family tree, their spiritual tree, their cultural family tree, if you will, their generational cultural tree, if you will, their nation's tree, what have you, their formation, their form, their formula. But why didn't they bear it? Because they had bad judgment. And that's what leads to destruction. Bad judgment causes you to reap what you sow in a way that is bad, because you sowed wickedness, so you reap the fruits of wickedness, the punishment that comes with wickedness. Wickedness burns like a fire, so you reap the consuming fire of God aimed at you to destroy you, because you didn't have the good judgment to do what is right. You chose to reject the leadership of me, and I, Mr. Right, on the right path, in his right mind, doing the right thing, who's the right king for you. You rejected me. You raised your daughters, and you encouraged them by your cultural complicity to reject me. By the cultures that you're a part of, by your actions, you're telling people, if you're a rocker, hey, date a rocker. If you're a rich corporate dog, hey, date a rich corporate dog. Okay, you're telling them to date people in your culture by your actions, which speak louder than words, and not to obey and only date those who obey God through his chosen king, me. Psalm 2 makes that clear. Why did the nations, all of them, plot in vain? God has installed his king on Mount Zion, and in 2 Samuel 5, David captured the city of Zion, the fortress of Zion, the city of God. And how did he do that? Martial arts. That's the essence of the story. That martial loyalty to God, martial and marital. The bridegroom, marriage, martial and marital. And of course, after I'm gone, there will be no valid martial arts anymore.